Hi guys, this is Justin from Justin's Fountain of Youth, and today I wanted to go over some exercise science basics, going over what are isometric and isotonic muscle contractions and how they can be used to better improve your performance, strength, or building size. So getting quickly into it, first one we're going to look at is isotonic. And iso, basically breaking down this word, iso is constant, tonic is talking about tension. So these are muscle contractions with constant tension. And they're more sort of what you would think of when you go into strength training, either calisthenics or body weight or weightlifting in general, right? You have some sort of constant tension on the muscle, whether it be sort of, a bicep curl with, barbell and the weight is here and you're putting sort of more or less constant tension on the biceps, or you're doing push up, right? And you're using your own body weight and then you're putting that tension on your pecs, your front delts, your triceps, that sort of thing. And this isotonic is actually broken down further into two different types. So the first is concentric, or what are sometimes known as positive movements. And essentially, these are very much what you think of normally when thinking about this. This is when the muscle shortens in its contraction to bring the weight up, or essentially that contraction is causing that movement. Now, the other opposite end of that would be the eccentric, or the negative part, and that's the muscle lengthening. So if we want to think of a sort of an example with the bicep curl, right? You have your weight as you're moving the weight up, right? That's your concentric contraction, right? The muscle belly is shortening to move the weight up, and then the eccentric is it lengthening as you go down, as long as you're resisting it. If you just let the weight drop to gravity, you're not really doing a negative or eccentric contraction at that point, because you're not really resisting it. You're just letting the full effect of gravity take on, and so the eccentric is really just that controlled of the weight in the opposite direction of the muscle belly shortening. Lastly, we're talking about isometric, and again, breaking down the word, iso constant, metric is talking about length, right? So this is muscle contraction without changing the muscle length, and that might be a little bit confusing, but a very simple thing is sort of, you think about that immovable object while you're putting force on it. So something like where I'm trying to push against this wall here, right? I can push all I want, but I'm not going to actually move the wall, and so that muscle contraction as I'm going, although the fibers are actually firing very strongly, the muscle isn't changing in length at all. It's not actually moving. Another thing that you can think of is sort of holds, or something more reasonable would be like a chest contraction like this, right? Like our press neck columns. I'm thinking about trying to push them through each other here. What's happening is that is really, if I didn't have this palm here, I would be performing a horizontal adduction. So that would be a very strong chest contraction. So that's looking at pec major, pec minor. And so when you do this, again, I can put a lot of force. I can feel those muscles contracting, but again, they're not really changing in that position because there's no real movement happening. So that's an isometric. Now, why do you care about these, right? Most people, when they go to the gym, they're basically thinking only of the concentric, or the positive, the shortening muscle. That's what's in your mind. But really, doing these different types can open up different styles of training and different strengths. And what I mean by that is, essentially, if you look at it, you're actually strongest in the negative, then the isometric, then the concentric. And so a lot of people, they only focus on the concentric, and so you're leaving out possible gains that you could do from these isometric or eccentric movements. And one example I like to use for the eccentric that I find a lot of times when I'm trying to help somebody learn their first pull-up is that a lot of times you're too weak to even do one of those. And even if you're trying to do something like use bands to help, depending on how much of a novice you are or how long it's been since you've been lifting, even selecting a band that's in the right range for you can be very hard. And so sometimes you'll really want to have a negative there to help, because you're quite strong in that. So for that instance, you'd grab the pull-up bar, you basically have a chair, step up on it, hold yourself and do a slow, let yourself down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is where I would like to go. But if you're, really struggling, then at least a 3 count, and you're just trying to do that. And that is actually something that a lot of people can do, even when they can't actually do the full movement concentrically, because again, you're much stronger in the eccentric or the negative than you are concentrically. And so that can be a great thing for you to help reach towards some goals that you're striving on, or it can be something that you can do in a progression sort of downward. Now, let's say you've completely exhausted the concentric movement. So let's say, again, for the pull-ups, you're much stronger now. You can do a bunch of pull-ups, but you can, let's say, do 5 of those to failure, but you can't do a 6th one. If you want to push further, you can actually add in a couple of negatives at the end, and I like to do that in my own training to try and stress again stronger, because again, you can probably do 2, 3, or maybe even 4 more of those negatives and add the additional strength and sort of go beyond failure as traditionally thought of that way, and really push that muscle even further. Another thing that you can do with those isometrics, again, I really like to have sort of that chest compression one. I'm working on trying to build my chest even more, is I sort of throw that in at the end of my workout for upper body. At that point, I basically hit my chest really hard, and so doing more concentrics is very difficult at that point, but I can put in a couple of very strong holds at that point and still sort of eke out a little bit more muscle building there by giving more stress in a way that I can still actually do it in a safe manner. The other thing that you can do is, if you want to try and incorporate tempo into your workouts. So tempo allows you to break a normal rep into these different rep ranges, and is sort of, so if you want to do an example, right, an example of a bench press tempo where you're maybe looking at strength is this 2-1-X, where X is talking about doing explosive. These are all sort of counts. So I'd be looking at the eccentric first, right? You unrack, you do a 1, 2 down. The 1 is the hold at the bottom. You're not just letting it on your chest, you're sort of resisting there. A pause, maybe getting ready for like a bench press competition, and then explode up as fast as you can from the bottom. Now, with weight, it's going to go a little bit slower than that, but the X is really just talking about as explosively as possible. Again, or if you could look at the pull-up, right? So instead of the eccentric or native being at the end of this, right, it's at the beginning, it's at the end, right? So we have our concentric, our hold, and then we have the eccentric or native at the bottom, or at the end. So essentially something like an X25 would be pulling yourself up as fast as you can to the top. You're holding over the bar for about 2 counts to get that additional contraction, especially a lot of people are weaker at the top there a little bit. They need that little bit of help, and then you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's 1 rep. And in that single rep, you're basically not only hitting your concentric, you're trying to hit a little bit of an isometric and eccentric all in one. And that way you can try and get all of that sort of benefit in one. And so, this is just a quick example how these are. What is an isometric contraction? What is isotonic? What are the different types? Why you might use them in your training? I hope you found this useful. If you did, please let me know. Do you use any of these? Let me know in the comments below. And hope you have a great one. Thanks so much. Bye.